you want to talk about Last Jedi?
What is that?
What is that?
You want to talk about it?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so in true TBG meta fashion, let's talk about talking about it first.
Okay,
Because I would probably enjoy that as much.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a little hesitant to talk about it because every other podcast in the creation has already put on an episode about it at this point, and I'm so slow at putting these episodes together. By the time this ever gets edited, it'll probably be out on video. But,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
at that point, who will care what we think? But I think we could have a discussion of related topics to the new Star Wars movie.
Yeah, I don't feel like we need to do a full 2-hour breakdown of every little bitty detail.
Yeah. We don't do that. No.
Given, again, like you said, given the coverage that has already been professionally offered. I mean, again, I got to hand it to Hello Internet. They're another epic review of Star Wars. And
I don't know.
okay, well, so we'll get into that. But so I thoroughly enjoyed that. But there are other very detailed.
Yeah, I've listened to at least a half dozen podcasts about it just in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah. So I don't think we need to fine-tooth comb it.
But it is an important part of our cultural heritage, so to speak, of certainly being geeks, is
Yes.
the Star Wars universe, and especially of geeks of our generation who grew up with this stuff.
Yeah, yes. So the evolution of the franchise is certainly interesting. We've talked about the run-up to this movie several times so far, so I think we are morally obligated to let our listeners know where we're staying at. Plus, we've also skirted about the general topic on occasion of the subjective experience of movies, and I think more than any of the other ones, this movie has raised that issue, at least in the Star Wars fan consciousness, if not the public.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the first thing to observe about it is that there is in the public sphere a disconnect, or at least a debate about whether there is a disconnect between how good this movie is and what indicates what people are thinking about the movie. So first of all, the box office, I think it just hit, or certainly by this podcast episode releases, it will have crossed $1 billion in international. So it's certainly making the money that Disney wants it to make. So that's not a debate.
But it has been quite divisive for the hardcore Star Wars fans and the casual Star Wars fans.
Yes. So initially, I remember, Tom, the last time we recorded, I had not seen it, but I had seen the Twitter reaction from the critics who had an early preview.
Okay.
And the Twitter reaction was overwhelmingly positive.
Right.
So I was all excited, and I was also, in terms of how good the movie was going to be, I was also spoiled by you a little bit.
How so?
Well, okay, so my anticipation was a little higher because you told me that Rian Johnson, the director, did a good job with Looper.
Yep.
And so that was reason to hope for the best. I had also speculated that this being the second of a trilogy, you have the most room to breathe. And so you have the more just like Empire was a great entry into that trilogy. This could also have the potential. But then as we were wrapping up our last record, I asked you if you wanted to review it, and you paused and said, yeah, we can maybe do that. So your hesitancy to not completely jump in said, okay, something might be wrong with this. So
I have a bad feeling about this.
Precisely. And so I did go into seeing it a week later, not spoiled on any of the plot reveals,
right?
But just my social media feed, I couldn't help but catch a glimpse that there was some controversy going on.
Yeah.
So basically what has happened is that there's a number of Star Wars fans, and how large this contrary group is part of the debate,
right?
That really did not like the movie. Mm-hmm. And why they didn't like it is also a matter for debate, which I find fascinating. So so perhaps we should just give it a little thumbnail summary and share what our initial gut reaction was to the movie and maybe what it is today. Do you have the same feel on the movie as you did at first reaction?
No. I've been on a bit of a journey with this film.
Okay.
I've seen it twice now.
All right.
The first time, I really don't think I was correctly calibrated to enjoy it. I think my expectations were in the wrong place. And my initial reaction was more in line with the very negative reaction you're seeing from the hardcore fans.
Mm-hmm.
I gave it about a week to ruminate in my mind and went and saw it again with my expectations set correctly about what I was there for and what I was going to expect from this new film. And I sincerely really enjoyed it a lot better the second time.
Interesting. So what bothered you about it the first time that did not bother you nearly as much the second time?
The tone of it was I had difficulty with. It wasn't like I had problems with Rogue One, but those were more functional problems with the filmmaking itself.
Right.
I don't think The Last Jedi had those problems. I think the direction was good, the acting was good, most of the scripting was good. My problem was mostly with the tone of it, and also the fact that I really wasn't in the right headspace to have a moral relativity in my Star Wars universe.
Right.
I want the light and the dark. I don't want shades of gray in the middle.
Right.
But once I adjusted those expectations in my mind, I was able to experience it more in the way that I think the Rian Johnson wanted us to. And I did enjoy it a lot more the second time, and I think I will probably enjoy it on a third viewing when I get to that. Interesting.
So I wish I had seen it a second time so I could validate what I'm about to say. So I had more evidence. So I had a very similar reaction to you the first time.
Okay.
I came out of it immediately disappointed.
Okay.
For a number of reasons.
Yep.
Since then, I have not only read a gajillion reviews of it, but I've talked to my close hardcore Star Wars friends and family, including Brother X. So I was in line with what is being characterized as the hardcore Star Wars fans' negative reaction to it.
Yeah.
Since then, I feel much worse about it.
Oh dear.
I've gone, so we started off both thinking it was bad. You've gone to think it's pretty good. I've gone to thinking that it's atrocious. And really, really disappointed.
Yeah.
With how it's gone. So before I get to why, so because I like to read reviews and think meta about it, I read a number of reviews that were in defense of the movie and reacting to the hardcore Star Wars fans' negative reaction. And I reacted very negatively to those reviews, not because I disagreed with their conclusion, but because I really feel, and maybe I just haven't read everything on the internet, that's quite possible, but the characterization of the objection to the quote-unquote hardcore Star Wars fans is what you mentioned previously, this moral relativity, right? That Luke wasn't perfect, that Luke made a mistake, that he had a fall from grace, that he wasn't ready to train Rey, that it wasn't just cut and dry.
It's difficult to see your heroes become grumpy old men.
Exactly. And, this ambiguity with Rey and Kylo and the mistakes that the rebellion makes and all this. And so I don't discount that some hardcore Star Wars fans feel that way. But I think it's folly to grasp upon that as the only objection to this movie. And I do the same thing when I really like or don't like some piece of art, is that I look at the objections to it or the other side, and I grasp onto the most easily dismissible argument and create what C.G.P. Gray in his video calls a totem of the other.
Right.
Right. Yep. And so, that's an easy straw man for me to burn down. Let me just dismiss that. And so I think to presume that there is groupthink on the part of those who enjoyed it or those who did not enjoy this movie, and that they're all in some grand conference room coming to the same opinion, I think is kind of silly. And it dismisses, I think, the more well thought out criticisms of this movie. So for me, I had much less of a problem with the moral relativity. In fact, I was looking forward to the moral relativity. There's a quote in the book adaptation of Force Awakens from the Journal of the Wills, one of the Jedi books that Rey absconds with towards the end of the movie, in the Falcon, by the way, that talks about this ambiguity between the light and the dark, and that there needs to be more balance. Right? And like I think we'd spoken on the podcast that ultimately, what was Anakin trying to do? Bring balance to the Force. He wasn't trying to have the Jedi win. Right? This is the whole theme throughout all these 9 movies has been about bringing balance to the Force. And so I'm totally cool with breaking those expectations and not having Luke be this completely mistake-free Messiah. I think that actually would have been a big mistake to have him come back and just walk around and be perfect.
Yeah.
And actually, if you go back and you look at particularly the first 2 movies, New Hope and Empire, Luke isn't perfect. Luke he's very rash in New Hope. He makes big mistakes in Empire. And he does walk around with more self-assured confidence in Jedi, but he was never a perfect Messiah. And when Jedi ends, yes, they got lucky and they blew up the second Death Star, and thank goodness that Anakin turns at the last moment. But he is at that point the Last Jedi, and he has to recreate the Jedi from scratch. And so it's not surprising that if he were to have all this pressure on him to rebuild the foundation of the Jedi, that he's really just doing off the top of his head, and he's training all these kids, that he's going to let 1 or 2 of them get away. That's totally understandable. And I like that he talks about that he had this moment of weakness, and we don't really know whose version of the story, Kylo's or Luke's, is the right one. I like that.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So from a character arc, narrative, script perspective, I'm fine with almost everything he did in the movie.
So what were your objections?
So this made me think, well, okay, so why am I reacting so negatively to this? Because I've seen other movies that are pretty lighthearted action romps, like the Marvel movies, for example. And I've enjoyed those, right? Like Guardians of the Galaxy is no great shakes in terms of gravitas and intense character arcs, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Right? And Doctor Strange was fun, and that had some cool like energy consciousness ideas that I was grooving on.
Yeah.
So what's the problem? So the thing that I've always loved about the Star Wars movies that I felt was totally lacking in this movie, and if this is the establishment of how they're going to be going forward, I think the franchise is dead in this respect, is that Star Wars is a world immersion franchise. It's a world immersion movie. Like when you go back and you watch New Hope, one of the awesome things that stands up about that are the really extended scenes on Tatooine that could have been completely condensed into a fifth of the length, but they draw you into this universe and they give you this feeling that you are part of this world. Like the reason why the Lord of the Rings movies and the books are so excellent is that they're not only creating a different world, a fantasy world, but they are drawing you into it and making you feel like you're experiencing it. Therefore, when you're a director and you are trying to create an experience where you're immersing someone in a world, anything you do to break that immersion is going to be counterproductive. And I feel like on several critical fronts, he failed in terms of the execution of the scenes and the telling of the story and the pacing. So some of these criticisms others have said, so I don't need to like go into all the detail, but in terms of how he used the humor, that really breaks several moments of potential dramatic seriousness.
You didn't like holding for general hugs.
So I have to admit, so I laughed during that movie, right?
Yeah.
But you could have had a humor that wasn't so much referential to I'm on a telephone. And it wasn't just the language. Like I know others have criticized the use of modern language, which I do think is a problem in terms of world immersion. But I could almost let that go by, but there were like the two other big moments that I thought were really lost were when Rey decides to finally train herself, and she's whipping this lightsaber around, and Luke comes up and sort of realizes that, okay, I told her I wouldn't train her because the Force is too strong with her. I've seen this before, and yet what am I going to do? It could have been this great moment, and they cheese out with some laugh about dropping a rock on the froggy people.
Yeah.
And the other two moments that I really didn't like were the okay. So I presume that on second showing you still didn't like flying Leia.
That didn't bother me, surprisingly.
Really?
Nope. It didn't bother me the first time.
Wow. I am shocked to hear you say that, but I respect your honesty, man.
No, I mean it's not something too surprising for a Force user to be able to do something like that. It didn't bother me.
So she's shown Force sensitivity in the past.
Yeah.
When she's like, oh, I guess I've always known that you're my brother at the end of Jedi.
Yeah.
She's never shown any ability to wield the Force in any capacity.
Yeah, we've also had 30 years of her history, unseen.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Okay, I'll give you that. But so we know Carrie Fisher has passed, and so
Right.
Leia is going to die.
No, or not appear for some convenient reason. Yes.
Yeah. So when she gets blown out of that ship, in a great shot, by the way, that to me was the perfect opportunity to say, this isn't just a Marvel movie. This isn't raccoons running around and little tree people with with guns. This isn't simply a laugh riot. Even though we embrace humor, it's not simply a laugh riot. This is a space drama.
Yeah, it was a perfect opportunity to drop the curtain on that character.
Absolutely, and it cheeses out. And okay, so I get
we lost Admiral Akbar in that same scene.
Okay, so in my top 3 worst aspects of this movie, off-screen Akbar death has that's probably my most hardcore geekiest objection. I understand how 90% of people don't like Admiral who, but yeah, dude, you don't kill Akbar off-screen. I'm sorry. That's just too disrespectful to the canon. Like, you can give me blue milk in Rogue One, but you're going to kill Akbar off screen. That's like, it's just insensitive. So the other moment that could have been a completely logical, sensible, appropriate moment of gravitas where it cheeses out in the worst way is when Finn is about to sacrifice himself and gets knocked off the laser by the worst character in the movie, Rose. Here's a guy who's been running for 2 movies. And I thought it was great that at the beginning of this movie, they show him still running. Like, it wasn't enough that he had this cool lightsaber duel. And they could have just checked him into the rebellion and be like, okay, whatever, Finn is totally on board. He's still running. He still has this fear and wants to get away. And I thought that was great. And so it was only when he fully realized that he made the decision to connect into something greater than himself and he was going to sacrifice himself. And you get this great feel of him about to do it. And then Rose knocks him off and has the worst line, the cheesiest prequel-y type dialogue. Dude, like, that was George Lucas level dialogue. Her talking about love and hate and what you save as the rebels are being annihilated literally in the back of the shot. And so I don't understand how you can be a director aware of the sensitivity of what you're doing and look at that at first cut and be like, whoa, we just did something wrong, right? So the fact that he did that really, really rubbed me the wrong way. So, and I won't go into all the other details, but it all left me with this feeling of, here's a director who can run through an action movie, but like pretty much skimmed the plot line of Star Wars and said, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, but I don't really get what's distinct about these movies. And so I'm sure that the next movie will make $1 billion and will sell 1 billion toys and that kids will run out to see it and all of the casual fans will enjoy it just like a Marvel movie will be. And, and maybe it will be entertaining in that respect.
Yeah.
But I have no longer any hope that we're going to have that same distinctive feel that separates the Star Wars genre from other movies.
So you're saying they've changed too much about what it means to be a Star Wars movie for you to enjoy as a Star Wars fan?
Yes. Okay. I think that's true. Yeah, it's the world immersion.
Okay. Let me rewind our little podcast a couple episodes, because I actually wrote this down because I was editing recently.
Okay.
I wrote down a little quote from you.
Oh no. Hold on. Are you going to throw it back in my face?
When we were talking about Star Trek.
Okay.
You said, quote,
"Oh yeah.
If you're not reinventing or reimagining something, then it's done."
Yes.
And you were A-okay with Tarantino taking over Star Trek.
Yes.
And doing whatever he wants with Star Trek.
Yes. Okay. So this is what frustrates me so much about the reviews that are dismissing the criticisms from hardcore Star Wars fans. I am totally down with reinventing and reimagining Star Wars. I don't think that you want to just retell the same 3 movies over again and again. Mm-hmm. Like, that was one of my criticisms of Force Awakens, that it was too loyal to simply retelling A New Hope, that it should have gone off on its own arc a bit more. So I'm fine with Grumpy Luke. I'm not fine with him taking the lightsaber and flipping it over his shoulder. See, that's the distinction. You can have a broken Luke who's made a mistake and needs to rebuild himself, but he's not going to take his father's lightsaber that has meant so much to him and have that moment and do that funny little thing. You know, that's not how you do it. And to spend so little, like, we haven't even talked about Casino Planet Land. All right, which if that didn't harken back to the prequels, you know, it's like an over CGI'd racing planet with slave kids. I was like, man, and the thematic hit you over the head morality play of that dialogue and those action sequences. Yeah, we're like borderline insulting. Of like, let's not be mean to the animals, that kind of thing, combined with the heavy-handedness of the very last scene with Force Kid and the broom, felt really off-putting to me. And it was, and so that scene was also illustrative of another thing that breaks you out of world immersion, which is ridiculous suspensions of disbelief in terms of consistency and believability of plot elements. So that they go on this whole side jaunt in order to release the animals for a couple hours, right? Those horsies are getting rounded up later that evening.
You're right. Yeah,
right. They did nothing. Plus, here's another thing that really. So when they first went down to the Casino Planet, I actually was looking forward to it. I was like, oh, what do you do in Star Wars universe, as distinct from other film franchises? What do you do when you go on to a new environment where aliens from multiple planets congregate? You have a great opportunity to showcase a bunch of cool aliens, right? This is Mos Eisley. This is Maz's cantina. This is your big opportunity. Yep. And you get almost none of that. You get all of these human looking people dressed up in Las Vegas, and it was just really, really annoying. And, you know, same thing with the immersion on the island. Like, I want to feel what's going on in this island, and they give you this tease where she falls down the hole of the dark side, and you have the infinite rays in this slight time sequence, and you never go on. That never gets followed up on. She never breaks it down with Luke. You never see that tied into any of the themes. It's just these little bits and pieces. Like Rian Johnson had a checklist of, oh, what do I need to do to make a Star Wars movie? Oh, I need to review the Empire segment with Yoda and do a scene that is similar to those scenes. Okay, this is how she's going to encounter the dark side. This is how she's going to deal with the teacher, and it was just very disappointing. So yeah, so I'm fine with reimagining. I am not happy with the way in which he executed the reimagining. That's my problem.
Okay. My next question would be, and this is something I pondered after I first saw it, because I had a lot of the same reactions that you did. So my question to myself, and I guess I'll ask you the same question, is the problem with the film, or is the problem with the Star Wars fans?
So another question that I haven't fully answered for myself, because The angrier I feel myself getting when I review this, the more I have to be like, okay, I'm getting angry about a movie that I saw. What am I expecting too much from what is in essence a very simple story?
Yes, and ultimately is a kids movie.
Exactly. And so, like, were I to watch the original trilogy, would I have the same level of criticism of some of the flaws in those movies?
Is the humor in The Last Jedi really out of place? I mean, there was lots of really dumb jokes in the original trilogy. Let me remind you that Chewbacca did the Tarzan yell in Return of the Jedi.
He did. He did. Again, I think that's false equivalency to say there's humor in the original trilogy and there's humor in this, therefore it's all cool. I don't think is a legitimate argument. Like I saw a retort to the hardcore fans' criticism of this movie's humor execution that showed a picture of Leia calling Chewbacca a walking carpet, which is in the original. Right? And so you have this vaudevillian Flash Gordon-y kind of feel, even in the original classic. But that's simply saying, hey, look, there's humor there, therefore any way in which you do humor and any place that you insert it and any way that you pull it off is fine. And I don't think that that's true. I think it's how you do it. I think had J.J. Abrams directed this movie, it would have been a lot better. I also didn't you also get the feel that there was some bit of directorial skirmishing going on?
Yeah, I did.
With the complete dismissal of Snoke and with the complete dismissal of the Rey parent.
Yeah, that is one thing that did bother me because it doesn't feel like there's any big plan here going on with the new trilogy. It seems like J.J. Abrams set up all these plot points, which Rian Johnson just came in and said, "Screw that, I'm doing my own thing,"
Right.
And that is a little bothersome to me. I really don't like it when a sequel or a follow-on movie changes something in the previous chapter in a story, so that when you go back and view it again, it seems differently. And that's what happened to that last scene in Force Awakens. Now, when that big emotional moment where she gives him the lightsaber. Now in the next movie, he just tosses it over his shoulder. Yeah. And so that when you go back and watch Force Awakens, that kind of pulls the emotional impact out of that scene.
Yeah.
So it does feel like they weren't communicating about what their intention for the trilogy was. And we'll have to find out what happens next because J.J. Abrams is now doing episode 9. So he's getting this story given back to him. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with it.
Yeah. So I guess to wrap it up, perhaps that is my last ray of hope, is that J.J. does get the reins back. And so if he is sensitive to the criticisms I was just describing, perhaps he maneuvers it to a better landing place. I'm skeptical though, because I think a lot of damage has been done.
To you?
Yes. Yeah, to me, right. So, I mean, again, so if $1 billion gets made and casual fans watch these movies, which I'm sure they will forever now, I guess it doesn't really matter. I guess I'm just sad to see the key elements. And by key elements, I don't mean Luke is perfect and we always have to have a Death Star and this always has to blow up. But the key elements being world immersion, believable, if not slightly stretched science execution. I mean, there's no sound in space. We understand that, right? Mm-hmm. But we like the sound of the lasers, but we let that pass.
Yep.
It's like during that whole slow motion chase of the rebellion, I kept thinking about Wrath of Khan, and I kept thinking about the Death Star assault at the end of New Hope, about how those were two great examples of close ship-to-ship battle presentation, and how that could be really compelling. Mm-hmm. Like that kind of naval warfare application to space battle that I thought they were really setting up. It just seemed, and with the bombs dropping, it just seemed like they were setting up that this was going to be this cool tactical naval skirmish. And it never really transpired. It was just a lot of hard to believe plot elements of the First Order not realizing what was going on and people able to come and go from the battle. And
well, again,
and that's another thing that breaks you out of world immersion, is that if you stretch those aspects of believability within the universe too far, then it just becomes silly. But who knows? Maybe that's just because I'm 45 and not 5.
Yeah, Again, I think the conclusion I came to after watching it the first time, thinking about it for a week, and then watching it a second time, I think the problems I had with it the first time were not so much the film itself, but my expectations of what I wanted from the film. And once I let go of that, once I followed Kylo's advice and let the past die, I enjoyed it a hell of a lot more the second time.
Dude, you didn't think that was too heavy-handed?
No, I don't.
Really?
It's space opera. Space opera is heavy-handed.
I don't know. Like, I got it the first 3 times that Rian Johnson told me that he was going to shake things up. I didn't need it like the 37th time. I don't know.
Hey, you also have to listen to Rose's advice too, and it's really easy to burn down the stuff that you hate, but it's more important to cherish the things that you love. It's
In the spirit of harmony, I'm not going to reply to your defense of Rose.
Rose is fine. I didn't have any problems with Rose. What do you have? What do you have against Rose?
In the opportunity they had to get the actual code breaker they needed, not just a lock picker, right? But if we were to believe the entire setup of that side trip, they needed the highest expert cryptographical savant in the universe, not some dude that they met in a cell. But she's fine with that. Let's just do that.
Hey, your plans never survive first contact with the enemy. You always have to adopt, adapt, and improve when you're...
Right. So let's not take the 5 minutes to walk back into the casino and get the guy we need. Let's go with the lockpicker. And let's release the horsies and say it was all worth it, even though the entire resistance is going to die because of our actions. These horsies got to run around for 2 hours. And then let me... Again, because I wasn't successful enough in destroying the rebellion the first time, let me knock off the one chance we have to escape by taking this gun out, by knocking Finn off and not allowing him to save the rebellion behind. Because I know that Luke is going to astral project and save the day.
Well, she saw it as a pointless sacrifice that wasn't going to have any effect.
So if we were to believe what was being set up, that wasn't going to be a pointless sacrifice. That was going to take the gun out and give them the time they needed to escape.
Says who?
Says the director. Dude, you're really going to have me believe that Rose was doing a technical analysis on the force equals mass times acceleration and its impact on the gun. Okay.
That's the impression I got. It's like Finn was just being recklessly brave at that point, and it was just going to serve no purpose to destroy himself in that massive Death Star beam. He wasn't going to have any effect on that thing.
So you think Finn was committing suicide without the intention to take the gun out?
Oh, I think that was his intention. I don't think that would have been successful, even if he had gone full bore into the mouth of that gun. I mean, if that gun can destroy the door, it's certainly going to tear apart his little junk cruiser.
All right, I'll let that pass. Harmony.
So, I mean, I've listened to a bunch of these podcasts recently, and a lot of them are picking over the same stuff. Okay. And the impression I've got from listening to a lot of them is that a lot of this is just shooting fish in a barrel. It's pointless nitpicking that at the end of the day doesn't accomplish anything other than pat yourself on the back for being a hardcore Star Wars fan. And, you know, I came to the conclusion that the film doesn't deserve that. You know, it's a lot better than Rogue One. It's a lot better than the prequels. I liked Force Awakens better, but it's not a terrible movie.
Yeah, I wish that I wasn't a Star Wars fan and that I was just a film student or a film professor, so that I could go in and critique what I really didn't like about it, which was, I mean, my least favorite character, even below Rose, was Rian Johnson. I really think that his execution of how he handled the humor, how he handled the plot lines, how he handled the moments of seriousness, and how that executed and flowed was the main problem of the movie. And I do think it's a bad movie.
Well,
I do understand that I have my little kid Star Wars blinders on, and that I have a bias that I can't see beyond. So I'm willing to accept that it has value where I cannot see it. However, I'm also afraid that this has just become Marvel movies, and I don't want it to just be Marvel movies.
It's special to you because of the generation we grew up in.
It's like, if I want to see a Marvel movie, I'll go see a Marvel movie, and I like Marvel movies when they're good, as you have introduced me to. But you go to Star Wars to to see something different. Now, it is an interesting meditation on how much can you reinvent and reimagine and evolve something until it's not the thing in itself. I mean, if how far can Devo take satisfaction before it's not satisfaction at all? Change all the lyrics, change all the music, then it's another song. Right? So I don't know.
Do you think it's possible that when episode 9 comes out, it complements episode 8 in such a way that you would enjoy episode 8 better? Like if you can think back to 1980 and Empire Strikes Back, people reacted to that then a lot differently than they do to it now. It's grown in reputation since it first was released, such that a lot of people consider it to be the best Star Wars film. At the time, that wasn't the case.
Yeah, I'm going to say probably not. I mean, the only hope I hold out is that JJ, does a better job, and minimizes the damage of what's been done. And I guess to end on a positive note, there's maybe more of a chance of that happening than I'm currently estimating, because again, I feel like the main problems I have with this were in execution, not in the character arcs and decisions. It is still really curious to me that Snoke just completely goes away.
Why is that?
Because they set him up as this big thing.
Did they? Or is that your expectation?
That was the expectation that was set up by the movie. That wasn't my expectation.
I don't necessarily think that's true.
Okay. I'm willing to let that one slide. But
you're willing to let a lot of slide.
No, what I'm saying is that if you had just scripted out the story arc to me and what happened with the characters of this movie, I would have been like, oh wow, that's surprising, but I think it could be an awesome movie. Go ahead and execute on that. I would then come back, and in my evaluation of Rian Johnson, I would give him a D-. But I would not give the choices of the story and the characters a D-. So, JJ in episode 9 has to be faithful to what's happened in the story, but he doesn't have to execute the same way.
Did you think Snoke needed a backstory? Or an explanation of what he was?
Eventually we should learn, yes.
Why is that?
Introduce a major character, have him control a major part of the universe, and then never explain anything about him?
Well, my question is, have we been trained now as Star Wars fans to expect all these really deep backstories? When Return of the Jedi came out back in 1983, we didn't know anything about the Emperor. He just showed up in that movie. He was a brand new character. We never knew anything about his backstory, but he was the villain. It's only since the prequels come out that we knew anything about Senator Palpatine and stuff like that.
Right. Didn't he intercommune with the Emperor in Empire?
In the special edition.
Really?
They retrofitted the actor into that role. It was a different face, I think, in the original release of Empire Strikes Back.
Huh. I will dispute that. Anyway, I don't think it's as egregious. Anyway, we're spending too much time picking on one little thing. I was really surprised when Snoke just went down, but I was like, oh, hey, that's fine.
That was a cool scene, wasn't it? The whole throne room scene, wasn't that a great scene?
So again, execution and a moment versus its appropriateness and believability within the context of the universe. In terms of execution, fantastic scene. Very enjoyable to watch. I love the flip of the lightsaber and Kylo flicks it on and jabs the dude, and really funly choreographed. I haven't even mentioned my favorite scene, which was the 10 seconds of silence on the hyperspace attack. In terms of the scene in and of itself, beautifully, wonderfully executed. By the way, did you also follow the slight dust up about Cinemark posting warnings that the sound cuts out at exactly this time in the movie?
I didn't see that. No.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, they're like pieces of paper outside the movie saying, the sound cuts out at this time, but don't worry, it's intentional for dramatic effect.
Yeah.
which then itself got criticism, and they quickly took the warnings down. But okay, so that and the fight with the red robe dudes, two great examples of what I liked about this movie and what I hated about this movie. I loved the execution of those individual moments, really enjoyable. Within the context of what was going on, makes absolutely no sense. Well, why in every single battle that has ever been in the Star Wars universe, don't you take one ship and ram it into light speed? Like, what? You've now invalidated the strategy and tactics of attacking the Death Star and every other large ship.
Hey, we had a global war on this planet that lasted for years, and it was only towards the end of the war when the Japanese were desperate enough to resort to kamikaze attacks. Before then, it wasn't cricket. You just didn't do that in war.
So Tom, you can fly faster than light speed. You can get little tiny dust crop ships going faster than light speed, but you can't automate the ramming of a ship into another ship. You can't put one of your slave droids to press the button. You have to have purple-haired lady on the deck doing it for dramatic effect. It's just so... Anyway, I understand there's no sound and gravity in space, so what am I complaining about? Nitpicky, blah, blah, blah. But it's too much. It's too much beyond the pale.
I have a nitpick there just to nitpick the nitpicks.
Okay, go ahead.
I see this all the time. People complaining, oh, there's no gravity in space. Yes, there is gravity in space. Just because you're above an atmosphere doesn't mean the gravity stops. The people in the space station above Earth experience 90% of the Earth's gravity as we do down here on the surface. There's gravity in space. It's just that they can float around because they're basically falling at the same rate that they're slipping sideways in orbit.
Yeah, I guess more precisely the criticism is there's not, like Ender's Game gets really into, and there's not one dimensionality of direction of gravity.
But it's not science fiction. It's fantasy. The whole universe is infused with magic, basically, with the Force.
Yes,
anything is possible.
But don't you think in the execution of science fiction, this is why science fiction is science fiction and not a complete. This is what makes Star Wars distinct from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. It's not just a complete 100% comic book. There are no rules and there is no intention for consistency. It's just a complete page-turning, bubblegum laugh riot action flick. If that's all you want Star Wars to be for the future, then
that's what it has been.
You don't think there's any level of gravitas in the originals? You think it's as light and airy as Marvel movies?
There's a different tone to them, but they are, as far as gravitas, I don't think that was ever George Lucas's intention. I mean, he was inspired by the Saturday morning serials and adventure stories and the hero's journey and mythology. This is not serious sci-fi. This is magical fantasy.
So I understand the Flash Gordon-y aspect of it. I get all that, right? But you take the culminating scene in Empire with Luke, I am your father, and you take the culminating scene in Jedi when the Emperor is about to destroy Luke. The major moments of the movies that everything builds up to are moments of gravitas. That's what it centers around.
They're moments of emotion.
It's interspersed and injected with healthy and appropriately executed doses of humor that do not take away from that emotional gravitas payoff. When you're watching Guardians of the Galaxy and the dude is floating up, hey, look, I'm Mary Poppins, that's completely 100% appropriate because that is the shtick of Guardians of the Galaxy. That's not the shtick of Star Wars. Star Wars has a different balance of tone, and this director was completely atonal to that. I feel.
Yeah, I really had to examine my feelings about this film the first time I watched it because I think those type of things did bother me, but I really did come to the conclusion that the problem was not the film; it was us. I really sincerely believe that our nostalgia for these films is crippling in a way, and they're blinding our how we view them. I mean, we saw the original films when we were kids.
Right.
We weren't adults then. Everyone that was adults then, thought it was just stupid, science fantasy, gumball adventure, right? They didn't take it that seriously. Nor should we take it that seriously.
Yeah, I think the originals take themselves more seriously than this movie did. I think the execution was off. I guess we'll have to agree to disagree, Tom, but I just don't think that you can take a movie anywhere and claim that it is being consistent within itself. I don't think it's tonally and thematically consistent within the franchise of Star Wars. Prequels, of course, excluded.
Well, what is tonally consistent with Star Wars? Just the original 3 movies at this point, and that's it?
I thought Force Awakens was tonally consistent.
Okay.
And again, not perfect.
All right, let me ask you this. So the original trilogy, A-okay in your book. Force Awakens, pretty good.
So
you didn't like Rogue One. You hated Last Jedi. You hated the prequels. So of the 9 Star Wars movies, you liked 4 of them. So my question to you is, are you in fact actually a Star Wars fan?
So you are leading the witness if you say excluding the prequels does not make me a Star Wars fan.
Maybe you're just not a Star Wars fan.
You are padding the stats if you say, "Oh, look, you're excluding 3 movies." No. So let me be clear. Let me be clear, okay?
Yeah.
I have problems with some of the ways that Return of the Jedi was executed, and I had major problems with how Rogue One was executed. I thought even Rogue One was thematically much more consistent with a Star Wars movie than this was.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I thought it had significant execution problems, which we went over, but I thought it was in the spirit of the Star Wars movies. I did not feel like this was in the spirit of the Star Wars movies. I thought this was a movie in the Star Wars universe that was executed tonally deaf to what the franchise has established.
All right. Well, one of the things that a lot of people,
which is why I hated the prequels, by the way.
One of the reasons a lot of people like this new film is that it releases Star Wars from the straitjacket of those expectations of what a Star Wars movie can be.
So I get that. I understand that. My nephew has a bazillion of the Legos, and he's seen the movie a bazillion times, and he loves it. And that's cool. But, so again, Tom, maybe in your editing prowess, you can put this following comment at the beginning so people don't hate me. But if you loved this movie, all the power to you.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a, we were laughing about grumpy old man. I'm not grumpy about people enjoying the movie. I'm not angry that many people love it. If you enjoyed it, then hats off to you. Like that's fine, and I don't think that's any less valid a reaction than my reaction is. I just think that when I go to a Star Wars movie, I want to enjoy it for it being a Star Wars movie, and not for it being anything whatsoever. And I think that's what this movie did. It said, not only am I not going to be faithful to what you expect for the character arcs and the overall narrative and the binariness of the good and evil, all of which I'm 100% totally fine with, but I'm also not going to be down with your expectations of tone and theme and any of the execution. And this is just going to be another rompy, CGI-heavy action film that doesn't bother trying to get those moments of gravitas and the execution right. It's just it doesn't bother about trying to have an internally consistent action scene or whatever. It's just going to go about doing its business. And if you enjoy it, great. If you don't, then so. I
can see that. And all I can say is just from my own experience, once I let go of what my expectations of a Star Wars film were, I enjoyed it a hell of a lot more than I did the first time. And that's all I can say,
Just breathe.
Just breathe. Just let go. Reach out with your feelings.
Do you have any different set of expectations for the Solo movie now that we've been through this arduous experience?
Arduous. I think it's probably going to be a lot more quality-wise like Force Awakens, just because Ron Howard's doing it. I don't think it's going to be as adventuresome, to say, as Rian Johnson's version of Star Wars was. So I think you might like it as a fallen Star Wars fan. I think we'll probably definitely see the pair of gold dice in that film.
Right. Yeah, that was kind of silly.
Why? What was it silly?
I really want to argue this because
no. I know. I know. I get it. You're not a Star Wars fan.
No, I don't know if this has been said before, though. You know why I hated those dice? Not just because it's birthed into existence as all of a sudden this incredibly sentimental thing, but when did we first see the dice? We see it when, is it Chewie that hits his head on them?
Yeah.
When he's walking into the cockpit of the Falcon when we see it for the first time? It's
Yeah.
so subtle, right?
Mhm.
It's this cool little like,
It's a detail.
it's a detail, and it's so smooth because you see it out of the corner of your eye, and it's this nod to lightheartedness that they're kind of like these rascals on their own. It's not like in your face. This takes the dice and it elevates it to an in your face moment. It was
No. It's just acknowledges the fact that details in people's lives have stories. There's probably loads of things in sitting around in the Millennium Falcon that has a story of how it got there.
right.
And this is just one example of that. It's just not random set dressing.
Yeah.
You can have a story with it.
Well, okay. We'll see.
You got to let go.
Dude,
I'm telling you, you got to let go. You got to go see it again and just go in as a 7-year-old again.
huh.
And not without this huge amount of baggage of 40 years of Star Wars affection.
But should all art be appreciated like we have no ability to evaluate it with any level of adult sophistication? We should go into everything that it's 7, like that we should have no criticism in it. So there's no difference between Citizen Kane and Force Awakens.
Of course there is. But they're two completely different things. Just because they're both films doesn't mean that they should be on the same level of criticism, though.
So long as you go into as long as you experience anything without any expectations, you will always enjoy it and you can have an equally positive experience.
No, I would say not without any expectations. I would say with your expectations set correctly, which is where I found my problem was the first time I saw it.
Which is low.
I don't think this is as bad as a movie as the crazy fanboys are making it out to be.
No, that's fine. I'm happy. I think it's more interesting that we disagree.
Yeah.
I'm more wondering how you do a solo movie, given the fact that he's not a likable character at the beginning of New Hope.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's a chaotic, neutral at best character. So how do you have him be a?
Yeah, this is probably another thing we need to let go. Let's have some new stories in the Star Wars universe, not rehash old stuff. Which is why I think Disney was so happy with Rian Johnson, is because he cut loose the bonds of the past, and that's why he gets a new trilogy to work with, because he wants to bring it to places where we haven't seen before.
Right.
And if you're not reinventing and reimagining something, it's done.
It's a wise quote, Tom. I wish I knew where you got that from. Rock and roll. Well, I suppose then we should probably get to work on reimagining and reinventing the 2-Bit Geeks podcast then, huh?
Sure. Let's introduce a new sidekick character.
Billy. Hey, Billy, how you doing? Yeah, I think we should reinvent. I think we should stop our next 10 episodes should be like very non-tangential, hardcore politics, maybe. Set people's expectations right, huh?
So, I really asked myself, am I a Star Wars fan after that first time I saw the film?
Right.
And so I decided, yes, I am. And if being a Star Wars fan means that all of a sudden these new force powers exist, or these characters aren't as important as I thought they should be, then I've got to go along with that.
Yeah.
The problem wasn't the film, but the problem was with me.
So I would agree with you on that, in that one's enjoyment of a film or any piece of art, it does depend on what you expect from it. For example, if you have zero expectations, and I mean zero, then you should thoroughly enjoy the prequels. Mm-hmm. And so then you say, okay, well...
And a lot of people did. I mean, I would say a lot of people did. People who weren't kids in the 70s, who saw the prequels as children rather than as adults like we did, they enjoyed the hell out of those movies.
Yeah, I mean, I have friends who grew up as little kids during the prequels who loved the heckfire out of them. And people whose opinions I greatly respect. I consider them hardcore Star Wars fans, just of a different generation. So yeah. So it is difficult to tease out my subjective bias. That being said, I'm not willing to go all the way and say that there's no capacity to objectively compare the original trilogy to the prequels.
Yeah.
I am willing to say that it's impossible to completely get over my bias. Therefore, I can never completely rule out that I'm imperfect in my conclusion.
The problems with the sequels weren't that they were badly made films. The problems were the bad acting, the bad casting, and a lot of the really bad dialogue that Lucas wrote.
Mm.
But it sent the Star Wars universe in places we've never seen before, and we were fine with that, weren't we?
Yeah. I guess we were. I mean, it did. Again, execution versus story. Like I did see an interesting echoing of some of the things. Maybe I'm giving the prequels too much credit, but if it weren't for the prequels, we wouldn't have realized one thing, which is when you look at the Jedi and how they managed the training of their order, I would say a number of their problems are self-created.
Oh, absolutely, and that was certainly Luke's viewpoint in this latest movie.
Right.
That the Jedi didn't accomplish anything, and they were abject failures in everything they attempted.
Yeah. So he doesn't really, again, frustratingly, go into what he's talking about in terms of detail. But my sort of filling in the blanks for him are they're inflexible in terms of how people evolve and connect with the Force, and so they don't they don't have a this is how this is how you deal with the dark side. This is how you explore that balance. This is how you live a normal human life. I mean, the Skywalkers have been these reactionary hotshots the whole time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was the problem with Anakin and Luke both, is that they were impulsive, and it nearly led to Luke's downfall. It did lead to Anakin's downfall. So you need a different approach to utilizing the Force. So I think in that moment when Kylo and Rey were momentarily united, and then she breaks off. She says, "Oh, Kylo, don't do this." But she never really articulates why she wants Kylo to join her and be peaceful, as opposed to like blowing up. It's like what are the first principles that she's driving off of that the First Order does not embrace? Like she's not in support of, for example, blowing up thousands of people on transport cruisers, right? But Kylo was totally fine with that. Like that's what they're really talking about in terms of light and dark, and they never really. So hopefully they break into that in the next movie. Again, there's so little there that was given to cut your teeth on that you're left to fill in the blanks. 2 hours and 40 minutes. You could have had another 30 seconds of Luke and Rey.
Yeah,
breaking down the.
Yeah, of all the burning questions you had that you wanted answered, the only one you basically got is where the blue milk comes from.
No, you didn't. Oh, you missed that, dude. So blue milk, as I understand the full canon, is from banthas. What you saw was kind of
milk.
Was a green milk from this other wacky looking sea creature that Luke slobbers all over his mustache,
drizzles down his chin.
Exactly.
Yeah, I could have done without that.
Yeah, the fried porgs. I didn't mind the porgs as much as I feared. I thought they were actually pretty funny.
Yeah,
I am starting to grate on the cameo appearances of the droids.
Yeah, there's no reason for 3PO to be in this movie.
Yeah, like I love 3PO, but exactly. It's like I don't mind him not speaking in the background. And like Chewbacca, like either do something cool with him or don't do anything with him. Like he just shows up for that porg eating contest and
he picks up Rey after the battle.
Yeah, exactly.
Taxi service. He's a space Uber.
Chewerber.
Chuber.
Totally. All right. So are we through destroying people's dreams? At least on my part.
Is there anything more you want to trash? Anything more you want to tear down?
Is there
stomp on?
Is there anything I like in this universe, Tom? Is there anything I think is good?
Well, I guess my goal is now I'll have to turn you back to the light.
I'm open. I mean, JJ's at the reins. We'll see how it goes on. As long as you are cool with a little more lens flare, I think we're set phasers to happy.
I mean, I don't think it's a perfect movie. It can be improved. It can certainly be shortened. The screenplay was not as tight as Force Awakens. I mean, there's lots of things you can improve, but I don't think. I mean, on Rotten Tomatoes, it's got a 50% audience rating, which is lower than The Phantom Menace. That's not right. That's entirely to do with just offended fanboys who want their Star Wars exactly the way they imagine it in their little perfect head.
I think you're being a little overly. I think you're straying to groupthink there.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think you are.
Fascinating how we come to those conclusions.
I think all those nitpicks that they had on Hello Internet when Gray and Brady just tore into it, I think that was shooting fish in a barrel. It was just too easy.
The reason why it's easy is because it was so poorly executed. It wouldn't be that easy if it was executed more professionally.
No,
I do not. You can have the same amount of humor, but execute it in a different way. You can have the same character arcs and the same story, and perform it in a different way. I can't imagine someone who understands even just the basics of what a Star Wars movie is, like sitting down and watching the first cut of that movie, and being like, "Oh yeah, we don't want to change that. That's perfect. Keep that in. Oh yeah." Like, I just can't imagine. But I can totally imagine a generic Hollywood director who spent 5 minutes reading a summary of the Star Wars movies and going, "All right, let's chug this out. $1 billion for Disney."
You don't think Johnson understands what Star Wars is?
No, I don't. Not in terms of the tone. No.
Okay.
Maybe he's even more professional. Maybe he does, and he overrode that because marketing wise, it's more efficient to appeal to a much wider audience, which clearly he did. I mean, it's a box office success. Disney is much more well suited from a business perspective to have very good, highly accessible, highly marketable films churned out year after year than it is having an excellent Star Wars film, which, it's totally understandable why he's gotten the green light for 3 more. So I get that. Just, not my cup of tea. Wah. 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 I'm going to take my blaster and go home.
Yeah, I want my Admiral Akbar back.
Dude, how do you... Okay, can we just end up... How do you kill him off screen? Like, they mentioned in passing, that was like... So that is either a total insensitivity and lack of awareness of the Star Wars universe, or it's just a complete middle finger to the Star Wars fans. It's one or the other.
You're so entitled. Dude, don't take my Akbar away. He's my favorite toy.
But dude, to cast him on the curb like that. Look, I'm not looking for 30 minutes of Admiral Akbar. All right? I'm not.
We'll get that in the spinoff movie.
Right. That'll be the movie for me. I'm just asking you not to kill him off scene. Blow him off the deck of the ship and have him hurtle through space without Mary Poppins back to the ship. That's cool. But don't just oh yeah, he's dead. Not cool, man. Not cool. At least they had that dude who's co-pilot with Lando in Jedi. Seeing him.
Yeah. Ning Num.
Yeah, dude.
He'll be offed in episode 9.
The beginning of the crawl of episode 9, Ning Num is dead.
Yeah. Ning Num is dead. Suck it, Star Wars fans.
If they did that, I would stand up and walk out of the film. Time for me to watch Antiques Roadshow or something, man. I don't know. I love Antiques Roadshow, by the way.
And there we go. You've transitioned from a Star Wars fan to an Antiques Roadshow fan. That is all part of growing up.
Have you ever seen Antiques Roadshow?
Of course I have. And the British original version as well.
Oh, that's like all great public television things. It originally started in Britain. You know what I love about that show? It has the most boring, unstimulating content that is presented in the most beautiful way. Like, well, last night I was watching it and there was an episode on this old lady brings in this like chest, this like 4-foot high wood chest that has like almost no ornamentation on it. And they talked about this like piece of wood for like 10 minutes and just every little detail. It was so soothing and relaxing. I was like, oh, what a...
Kind of like listening to Star Wars podcasts.
Yeah, right. I was like, what a breath of fresh air this is, man.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you've lasted this far, perhaps you have something to tell us about Star Wars as well. Join the episode discussion at the 2-Bit Geeks subreddit. You'll find the link in the show notes. Come tell us what you think. And as always, we thank you for your support.